Let's talk about the difference between transgender and transsexual. Hello everybody, what's up? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Victoria Rose. I'm a 25-year-old woman of transgender experience, and here on this channel, baby, we talk about literally everything transgender, from workbook videos to pop culture reactions to more educational content like this. If you want some gender-affirming content here on YouTube, baby, make sure you subscribe down below so you can join the family and never miss out on a new upload. Today, we are going to define the difference between transgender and transsexual. I get a lot of questions about terminology, whether it's why do you refer to yourself as a woman of transgender experience, or why do you call yourself a transsexual and not transgender? There are a lot of connotations to these words, and I think in order to best explain them, you need to have them explained to you by a trans person. So that's what we're going to do today. And before we dive into the etymology and my own opinions, as well as some of your guys' opinions that I've gotten on my Instagram, I have a word from our wonderful sponsor over at Catch Beauty. Hey, I have something super exciting to share with you. As a transgender woman, I used to struggle with a lot of unwanted hair. I have spent so much time and money on painful and expensive procedures trying to get rid of all of my body hair, and I figured there must be a better way. That is when I discovered Catch Beauty. This right here has been a game changer for me. I actually can't believe the results that I've seen from this. I mean, look at the before and after pictures. Wow. The best part is I get to do it all from the comfort of my own home. No more awkward and expensive salon visits, no more painful treatments, just smooth skin on my terms. I just upgraded my IPL to the MX2 Pro, and this baby is strong. And guess what? Catch Beauty now has this fantastic hair removal cream and growth inhibitor spray. The cream is so gentle, leaving my skin soft and hair free, and the growth inhibitor spray, girl, obsessed. I've noticed a real difference in the amount of time it takes for my hair to grow back. I have never felt more confident or in control of my beauty routine. On top of just having fantastic products, Catch Beauty is a transgender dedicated brand, and that means so much to me as a transgender woman to see that representation out there. So if you're like me and you are tired of the endless cycle of hair removal, do yourself a favor and go to catchbeauty.com/discount/rose and use the code ROSE at checkout for money off your order. Thank you so much, Catch Beauty, for sponsoring this portion of today's video, and without further ado, let's talk about the difference between transgender and transsexual. Okay, so welcome to our vocab lesson. So what is the difference from transgender to transsexual? So in short, on the basics, transgender is an umbrella term. So that has a lot of terms underneath it. Here is the term transgender, and underneath are all sorts of different identities that fall underneath it, including non-binary, genderqueer, gender non-conforming, two-spirit, transsexual. All these different things are included underneath the umbrella term. The way I tend to explain it is sort of like a square and a rectangle, like all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are square. At least in English, we make things easy by saying cisgender or transgender, which really just means if you identify with the societal gender norms assigned to you at birth, or if you do not. The term transgender is used more often in conversation. So when someone thinks trans, they most often think of a transsexual, someone that's transitioning from one binary to another, but that's not always the case. In the mid-20th century, the term transsexual emerged in medical literature, initially coined by endocrinologist Harry Benjamin in the 1966 book, The Transsexual Phenomenon. His definition was exclusive to those who sought out medical treatments, those who were assigned one sex at birth and wanted to physically and mentally, emotionally, socially transition to another sex. The term was primarily used in like medical and psychiatric conversations, and it wasn't very common knowledge. They were just kind of seen as maybe transvestites or like freaks. Now remember, that was the mid-20th century, so as society progressed, so did the understanding of gender and a more aware sense of how people identify. The word transgender emerged in the 1990s, and this was a cultural shift, moving away from a sexualized, fetishized, medicalized view of who people were and embracing the diversity of gender. The term transsexual has often been linked to pornography, often sensationalizing or fetishizing the transgender experience. Due to societal standards, most transgender women don't have an opportunity to get employed, and this was especially true before the 2000s, 2010s. Many transgender women had to engage in survival sex work in order to make ends meet, and in order to make their identities known, they would put TS before their name, which which stood for transsexual. Now we see this currently with incredible trans icon T.S. Madison, who I absolutely adore. Maddie keeps T.S. in front of her name as a symbol to her time working in sex work, paying homage to her origins and honoring the way that she paved the way for so many girls following her. I mean, T.S. Madison was featured on Beyonce's song Cozy, and so, I mean, T.S. Madison won a Grammy. She was on the Renaissance album. For a long time, the term transsexual was kind of shunned because it had such a sexual connotation to it. But in reality, it's just a medical term. It's just a term defining one specific experience, and there doesn't have to be this connotation to it. I've seen a lot of trans people on the internet today using the term and reclaiming the term, just like I have. The choice of using transgender over transsexual represents a larger cultural shift of broadening understandings and perceptions of gender roles or diversity in society. As a young trans person in 2024, how do I feel about the term? I personally often identify myself on YouTube in the beginning of just about every single video here. I introduce myself as a woman of transgender experience. The reason why I do this is because I am first and foremost a woman, and my experience of womanhood is one of transgender origin. So I'm proud of my history, but that doesn't define who I am. If we get technical, I am definitely a transsexual. I feel very comfortable with that title, and if someone called me a transsexual, I would not feel offended in any way. If somebody, without outing me, you know, referenced me and said, Victoria, she's a transsexual, blah, blah, I mean, that fits the description. I mean, my experience of gender is very much binary, although I understand that it is a spectrum. I personally was born male on one end of the binary, and I identify and always have identified as a female on the other end of the binary. And for me, I did not feel complete until I got everything taken care of, you know what I mean? And so for me, the term transsexual perfectly fits my experience, and it doesn't perfectly fit everybody's experience, and that's okay. I also understand that because of its link to pornography in the sex industry, it does have a lot of connotations. So if I were to tell somebody I'm a transsexual, it has the same connotation to some that the term transvestite has, which is really somebody who dresses up as a female for sexual pleasure. So we've talked about the controversial nature of the term transsexual, how I feel about it, and I have asked all of you on my Instagram, link down below, to tell me how you feel about the term transsexual versus the term transgender, and you all had a lot to say. Starting out with my favorite one, TBH, transsexual is kind of like saying, baby, I'm a transsexual, and taking a puff of a cigarette kind of eats. And she's right. And she ate that. That is so true. I mean, it honestly does have a certain like je ne sais quoi to it, you know what I mean? Like saying like, oh, I'm a transsexual. I'm a transsexual. My biggest issue with transsexual is just that most people who use it have outdated / transphobic views. I get that a lot, and I've heard that quite a bit in these as well. I've gotten quite a few people saying that most people who use it tend to have sort of closed-minded views, and I wonder if they mean people who might not understand trans folks will say transsexual, but like, she's a transsexual. Do they mean that, or do they mean the, as some put it, the trans medicalists, people who believe that you need to have gender dysphoria in order to be trans? Now, that's a whole other video. Transsexual just feels a lot more accurate for me. I'm changing my sex, not just my gender. True, that's exactly how I feel too. Like my gender has been the same. I am changing the social perceived gender, but I'm also changing my physical sex. So to me, I'm a transsexual. I don't really like either. It implies a switch happened from one thing to another when a lot of us always knew. True, very true. I always knew I was meant to be a girl. I remember identifying with princesses and wanting long hair, and I didn't understand why I couldn't look like my female friends. And, you know, the only thing that changes other people's understanding of who you are, not who you are. Nothing inside has changed. The only thing that has changed has been other people's understanding of me and my outside. Maybe since I'm older, transsexual brings back thoughts of Rocky Horror, and that wasn't the best. That's so funny. So if y'all are familiar, this is from Rocky Horror Picture Show, where Tim Curry plays someone who is a self-proclaimed transvestite from transsexual Transylvania. I personally love it. I really, when I hear the word transvestite, I think of Tim Curry in Rocky Horror. I don't think of a transsexual. One is the identity and the other is having medical intervention to change sex characteristics. That's how I feel too. Like I am transgender. My identity is transgender, but I am also a transsexual because I transitioned my sex from one to another. I am physically a different sex now, so that's why I'm a transsexual. That's actually like exactly how I feel. Transsexual feels objectifying and outdated. Transgender fits better for me at least. Totally get it. The word sexual at the end makes it sound like a sexual orientation, but it is, I feel that it's necessary because you did change your sex, so it still applies to the term. I just think it might not fit under the LGBT or the LGB umbrella, you know what I mean? I think that should be its own thing, and then gender being its completely other thing. Because sexuality is who you go to bed with, and gender is who you go to bed as. I feel like they have slightly different meanings, but I just prefer trans. That's what I say. I just say I'm trans. And although I say on here I'm a woman of transgender experience, when I introduce myself to people, I just say, I mean, I don't say I'm trans, that'd be crazy, but like if I'm telling someone that I'm trans, like coming out to them with my history and my work or whatever, I say I'm trans. I think transsexual sounds glamorous. I like it better than transgender in my opinion. I agree! Oh my god, agreed with the first person right here. I completely agree. I mean, transsexual sounds like she's a transsexual, darling. Like transsexual. It implies like, I don't know why, it feels like money to me. It does. Transsexual does feel more glamorous than transgender. I think transsexual being used in a modern context is divisive and in historical context is fine. Okay, I understand how it could be perceived as divisive. The internet has really taken the term transsexual and ran with it, and I think it's time that we take it back. I feel like transsexual confuses people into thinking being trans is a sexual orientation. Yes, totally. People think that men who like trans women are like their own sexuality, or that transsexuals like myself have their own sexuality, but that's not the case. Transsexual would be a better term to give binary trans folks a space of our own. Completely agree. I personally am a binary trans person, and that's okay. I accept all the non-binary trans people as well, but I personally am from one to another, and I find that it can feel alienating when you are a transsexual who maybe lives stealth or is just on the more stealth side of things, or aspiring to that, and going to a trans group where it's all non-binary people, for example, I wouldn't feel totally at home. I wouldn't feel like they're all like me, because they're not. We're under the same umbrella, but that's like being a lesbian showing up to a meeting of gay men. It's like, yes, we're both gay, but it's not the same experience. Finally, transsexual used to have a mentally ill connotation when people said it, and I can't get past that. Totally get that. I'm sure it was like in the DSM as a mental illness, and so is gender dysphoria. There's a lot of reasons behind that, because that also gets us access to hormones and stuff with insurance, but that's a whole other discussion. I don't really know anything about that. In my experience, it feels like a Freaky Friday situation where I've just always been a girl in my head. Like there was never any male part of me, and I just kept waking up with the wrong body every day. It felt and it feels like I was meant to be born one way and I was born the wrong way. And I'm just taking steps to correct it. So for that reason, I'm a transsexual. I don't consider myself to be, for that reason alone, I don't consider myself to be a part of the LGB community. I'm bisexual, you know what I mean? But for being trans, I sort of see it as its own thing. Like I just took steps to correct that, and I've moved on. I hope this video helps shed some light on the difference between being transgender and being transsexual, or perhaps being both. I understand this is a highly debated topic, but please take a second to understand everyone's experience is different. Even people that might fall under the same label experience life in different ways. So for some people, a term that might be empowering and giving a reclamation energy. It might feel degrading or excluding to another group of people. So please take every response with a grain of salt. Transgender, transsexual, whatever. All identities are valid, and I think it's such a beautiful thing to examine how language changes over time. I hope you will enjoy this video. If you did, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up. It helps my channel out so much. If you are not already, make sure you subscribe down below so you can join the family and never miss out on a new upload. If you know anybody who would benefit from this content, make sure you share it with them. You are all amazing. Thank you so much for watching, and until I see you next week, good luck. I love you.